There is a cigar box sitting in a storage facility at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. It is not labeled with anything dramatic. It looks like the kind of container you might find at the back of an old desk drawer. Worn, unremarkable, easily overlooked. Inside it are three small objects: a bronze hook, a granite ball, and a fragment of dark cedar wood. They are wrapped in aging tissue paper. Most people who have walked past them in the last century and a half have had no idea what they were looking at. But these three objects came from inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, from a sealed chamber that had been untouched for over 4,000 years, and hidden among them is evidence of a room that, according to every official architectural plan of the most studied structure in human history, should not be there. Not a myth, not a metaphor, a physical space inside the pyramid that was sealed from the inside at the time of construction and appears to have been designed so that no one would ever find it. That is where this investigation begins. If you find yourself drawn to mysteries like this, places and objects that rewrite what we think we know, consider subscribing right now. We cover the archaeology that official channels tend to leave on the shelf. In 1872, a Scottish engineer named Waynman Dixon was hired to carry out maintenance work inside the Great Pyramid. Dixon was meticulous. He walked every inch of the Queen's Chamber, a room that sits in the heart of the structure on the pyramid's central axis, and he noticed something that generations of researchers before him had completely ignored. On the north and south walls of the Queen's Chamber, there were faint, shallow recesses in the stone, small indentations, barely visible. Scholars had cataloged them before and written them off as decorative features or construction irregularities. Dixon pushed a long metal rod into one of them. It went straight through the wall. Behind the surface of the Queen's Chamber, there were shafts, hidden shafts, narrow rectangular passages running at precise angles up into the body of the pyramid. Dixon had his crew widen the openings and crawl inside as far as they could. They retrieved the three objects from the southern shaft: the bronze hook, the granite ball, the cedar fragment. These became known as the Dixon Relics. They were shipped to the British Museum, catalogued under acquisition number EA 68510, and then, for reasons that have never been adequately explained, they were separated. The cedar fragment ended up in the care of the Aberdeen Museum. The other pieces dropped out of institutional memory entirely. For over 100 years, two of the three relics were effectively lost inside the British Museum system. The cedar fragment was only positively identified in 2020 when a museum assistant at Aberdeen recognized it in an old cigar box. Carbon dating confirmed it was nearly 4,500 years old. Not a replica, not a symbol, an actual piece of material retrieved from inside a sealed shaft that the pyramid's builders never intended anyone to enter. Here's where it gets strange. Dixon did not climb far enough. It would take another 120 years before anyone went back inside those shafts with the right equipment. In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink was commissioned by the German Archaeological Institute to improve the ventilation systems of the King's Chamber. He built a robot called Upuat 2, small, tracked, equipped with a high-resolution camera, and he decided to run it through the Queen's Chamber shafts while he had access. The robot crawled 65 meters into the southern shaft. That is 213 feet, deeper than any human had ever gone. And at the end of the shaft, Gantenbrink's camera revealed something that had never been seen before: a limestone door, small, polished, precisely fitted to the shaft walls. And on its surface, two corroded copper handles, the kind of handles you use to pull something open, a door. Inside a shaft barely large enough to fit a small dog. A door that had been sealed shut since the pyramid was built. No one had looked at it, touched it, or acknowledged it for 4,500 years. Gantenbrink immediately reported the finding to the Egyptian authorities and his institutional supervisors. Within weeks, he was expelled from the project. His access was revoked. The shaft was closed. And the official position from the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities, held for nearly a decade, was that the door was not significant and that no further investigation was necessary. That explanation has a problem. You do not put a polished limestone door with copper handles inside a sealed shaft if there is nothing behind it worth protecting. For decades, scholars dismissed the shafts themselves as symbolic. The official interpretation, still cited in most textbooks, is that they are stellar shafts, narrow conduits aligned to specific stars so that the pharaoh's soul could travel upward to the heavens after death. The southern shaft of the king's chamber aligns with extraordinary precision to the star Alnitak, the lowest star in Orion's belt, as it appeared in the sky around 2450 BCE. The northern shaft of the king's chamber points directly at the star Thuban in the constellation Draco, the pole star at the time of the pyramid's construction. This is not coincidence. These alignments require advanced astronomical knowledge and surveying accuracy that Orthodox scholarship has spent decades explaining away as approximate or symbolic, or both. But the Queen's Chamber shafts are different. They do not exit the pyramid. They stop. They terminate inside the structure. They were built to go somewhere internal. And at the end of one of them is a sealed door. That is not a soul shaft. That is architecture. That is engineering. Something was put in there, something was sealed inside. Then modern science found something that changed everything. In 2002, under international pressure and significant media attention, the Egyptian authorities allowed a second robot into the southern shaft. This one drilled a small hole through Gantenbrink's door and pushed a fiber optic camera through the opening. What it found was a small chamber, a room roughly the size of a large closet, cut into the stone. And on the far side of that chamber, another door, a second sealed limestone door with no handles. The space between the two doors showed markings on the floor that appeared to be construction tool traces or measurement lines. The floor was unfinished. Then the JD project, in 2011, sent an upgraded microsnake camera through the breach and managed to capture images of the inner walls of that chamber. And on the back of the first door, the polished surface facing inward, the surface that had been hidden from view since the pyramid was sealed, there were hieroglyphs, written in red ochre. The marks were analyzed and photographed. Egyptologists could not agree on what they said. Some argued they were construction graffiti, workers' marks, standard quality control notations. Others argued the symbols bore no resemblance to known construction marks found elsewhere in the pyramid. The footage was partially released. Then the project went quiet. The team members went largely silent. The second door remains sealed to this day, not similar to a sealed chamber, not inspired by one. The same. A physical door, a locked room, inside the most analyzed monument in human history. And no one has opened it. Now listen carefully to what the pyramid's own architecture is telling us, because the shafts are not the only anomaly. In 2017, an international team of physicists and engineers working under the ScanPyramids initiative used a technique called muon tomography to map the interior of the Great Pyramid without drilling a single hole. Muons are cosmic ray particles that rain down from the upper atmosphere at nearly the speed of light. They penetrate stone the way X-rays penetrate flesh, and by measuring their density and trajectory as they pass through the pyramid's mass, researchers can construct a three-dimensional map of what is inside. The results were published in November 2017 in the journal Nature. The team had found a void, a large, previously unknown space running above the Grand Gallery, the pyramid's enormous ascending corridor, and extending at least 30 meters in length. That is roughly the length of a standard aircraft fuselage. It had never appeared on any architectural survey in modern history. No expedition had detected it. No text had described it. It was not on the maps, not on the plans. It was sealed, It was mapped for the first time in 45 centuries by cosmic ray particles. And then the Egyptian Antiquities authorities announced that no further investigation would be conducted until a formal excavation plan was approved. That was 7 years ago. Then, in March of 2023, the ScanPyramids team announced a second discovery. Using refined muon measurements, combined with ground-penetrating radar and ultrasound imaging, they had located a corridor running alongside the north face of the pyramid, approximately 7 meters below the surface. The corridor is 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, 2 meters tall. It has a vaulted ceiling, a chevron-shaped roof made of angled limestone slabs, consistent with the load-bearing architecture found over the king's chamber. An endoscope was threaded through a joint in the outer casing stones, and for the first time in over 4,500 years, a camera saw inside this passage. The walls are undressed stone. The floor is clean. There are no inscriptions. And at the far end of the corridor, there is a wall, a sealed wall. No one knows what is behind it. Now, does this prove the most extreme version of the story? Probably not. The void above the Grand Gallery may be a structural feature, a series of gaps designed to relieve the enormous pressure of the masonry above, similar to the 5 stress-relieving chambers already known to exist above the king's chamber. The corridor near the north face may be a builder's passageway, a staging area used during construction and then sealed off when the outer casing was completed. These are reasonable explanations. They are offered by serious archaeologists, and they may be partially correct, but that does not make the discovery ordinary, because here is what neither explanation accounts for. You do not finish a wall, polish a door, attach copper handles, and seal a passage if there is nothing inside worth concealing. Construction voids do not have doors. Staging passages do not have vaulted ceilings, built with the same precision used in ceremonial chambers. The architecture of concealment is itself a form of communication. Someone built these features specifically so that they would not be found. They were not building, they were hiding. And if that is true, it means our history is missing a chapter. Consider what the Great Pyramid already contains that we still cannot explain by conventional means. The king's chamber is built from 80-ton granite blocks sourced from Aswan, over 800 kilometers to the south, quarried with a precision that leaves gaps of less than 2 millimeters between surfaces. Modern structural engineers have calculated that the tolerances inside that chamber are tighter than the manufacturing specifications for nuclear power plant components. The corbelled roof above the Grand Gallery rises 9 meters in 7 perfectly overlapping courses of limestone, and it is not shifted by a single millimeter in 4,500 years. These are not the achievements of a civilization working by trial and error. They are the achievements of a civilization that understood load distribution, material stress, thermal expansion, and acoustic resonance at a level we still struggle to fully replicate. And yet, somewhere inside this structure, in a corridor that was sealed before the outer casing was finished, behind a wall that has not been touched since the builders walked away, something is waiting. The Dixon Relics, the 3 objects retrieved from the sealed southern shaft in 1872, were never fully explained. The bronze hook has no known parallel in Egyptian archaeological records from the Old Kingdom period. No similar tool has been found in any pyramid context. The granite ball is a perfect sphere, polished to a smoothness that required either extraordinary manual skill or a level of abrasive technology that does not appear in the standard toolkit of pyramid-era craftsmen. These objects were placed inside a shaft that was then sealed inside a chamber that was then sealed inside a pyramid. They were not left by accident. They were placed deliberately by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and chose to leave them there for a reason we have not yet understood. One of them was lost for a century inside a cigar box at a Scottish university. The other, 2, remain missing inside the British Museum's storage system to this day. It was sealed, it was mapped, and then it disappeared. Here is the final question this investigation cannot answer. The 2023 corridor ends at a wall. The 2017 void floats above the Grand Gallery with no known access point. The sealed chamber beyond Gantenbrink's door contains a second sealed door that no human has opened. These three features exist independently of each other in different parts of the pyramid, and none of them appear on the architectural plans that Egyptology has worked from for 2 centuries. The official surveys of the pyramid, the ones taught in universities, cited in textbooks, published in journals, are incomplete. We do not know what is in this building. We have been studying its exterior and its known corridors for 200 years, and we still do not know what is inside the walls. That is not a marginal mystery. That is a fundamental gap in the record. And the gap is not in the ancient past. The gap is in the present. It is happening right now, in real time, as the Egyptian authorities weigh excavation proposals and international teams refine their scanning data. And the sealed doors sit undisturbed inside the stone. The 2023 corridor is still there. The wall at its end has not been touched. The second door in the Queen's chamber shaft has not been opened. The 30-meter void above the Grand Gallery has not been entered. And the cigar box at Aberdeen sits in climate-controlled storage, holding a piece of cedar wood cut from a tree that grew during the reign of the pharaoh who built all of this, placed inside a passage that was not supposed to be found. Retrieved by a man in 1872 who was also not supposed to be there, lost for a century, rediscovered by accident, carbon dated to confirm it was real, and still, without a satisfying explanation. No one has gone back in. If this investigation opened something up for you, hit the like button and subscribe. We go deeper every week. And if you want to follow the thread further, watch our next video on the Osirian at Abydos, a structure found buried underground just 500 kilometers south of Giza that predates the pyramid it allegedly inspired by methods that official archaeology has never been able to account for. The link is on your screen now.